Hello everyone, Cricket Star Boy Tyrell Odin back with another video, and I hope you all are all well and in very good health. I haven't made a video for the last week or so as I was recovering from spraining my ankle last week, but thankfully the ankle has all healed up, but I'm not taking any big risks. Ladies and gentlemen, today I join the rest of my fellow Trinidadians and Tobagonians in condemning what has to be the biggest highway robbery, or should I say the biggest mockery slash controversial incident that the Caribbean Premier League has caused, that has not only led to us being eliminated, but there's a lot of chaos and bacchanal on social media. Now, I've seen videos within the last 24 hours or so of most of my fellow Trinidadians and Tobagonians showing their anger and frustration. I even also showed my anger and frustration as well, but decided not to go over the marks because I'm not that type of person without fear of contradiction that would go over the limit. Within the last 24 hours or so, everyone across Trinidad and Tobago, including myself, who's a die-hard cricket fan, was extremely outraged with regards to the outcome of the eliminator match involving the Trinbago Knight Riders and the Barbados Royals in the Caribbean Premier League, where we lost after ending up being so close to qualifying to Friday's second qualifier, aka the virtual semi-final. Now, in this video, I have to share my take on the situation. I've seen everybody do their live video and this one and that one say, this is my opinion that I want to share, and what I have to say here is facts and not fiction. Before I get into the rant, let me point out that TKR did win the toss last night and elected to bat. They posted 168 for 3 in 19.1 overs, and at that stage, Puran was on 91 not out, while Russell at that point was 20 not out from 18. Now, let me break it down a few ways. TKR again made a blunder by sending Narayan into open, and TKR's batting order has been a problem, especially that top order for the last 4 or 5 years or so. Since that 2020 title run, the top order has faded away with a few imps and glimpses there. But let me say this. The top order needs an operation cleanup next season. We cannot persist with Narayan no more at that top order spot, because had he went in like what occurred last night, is trouble from beginning. Look, for example, only two or three men came good with the bat this season, mainly Nicholas Puran, who became the second TKR batter after Colin Munro, one of my other favorite players, to cross that 500 run mark in the Caribbean Premier League. I think he finished up on 500 and something runs and at the top of the table. But let me also say this. We lost that game because of bad bowling from Chris Jordan, and worse enough, there were so much blunders made, not by TKR but by the match officials. They ended up scoring 168 for 3 at the start of the final over, where out of nowhere, two of the light towers went out for more than 2 hours. From almost qualifying to being knocked out, this has to be the most heartbreaking, but on the whole, disgraceful exit that we had to see in the history of CPL. And let me also say this. If the 2022 exit was embarrassing, making the finals last year was brilliant despite losing to Amazon. But for TKR to go out like this was highway robbery. But I'm going to explain the highway robbery part later on in the video. For me, the turning points in last night's match has to be at the back end of the power play into the middle phase of the Knight Riders innings, where things drastically slowed down. Then when we came out to bowl, when Royals needed the 60 or 5 overs under the Duckwood Lewis Stern method, Chris Jordan's bad bowling cost the Knight Riders big time. And the million-dollar question that has to be asked, why didn't Pollard either bowl Akil Hussain or Waqar Solanki, who was absolutely splendid throughout the competition? That's the million-dollar question we'll never know. And the truth is, let me be very honest, Pollard was never a good captain nor a bad captain. He was always mediocrity, like Australia's Mitchell Marsh in his captaincy reign currently, and Pakistan's Babar Azam, who, by the way, stepped down yesterday for the best interest in the team. But let me get to my rant last night. What happened last night in the eliminator was a total disgrace, not only to the cricket, not only to the sport in Guyana, but to the whole of cricket around the Caribbean and world cricket fraternity to the whole. And let me use my common sense here. All the fighting on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, X, or Instagram involving our fellow Trinidadians and Guyanese, it needs to freaking stop. For years now, Trinidad and Guyana have been having this rivalry in cricket, whether it's curry chicken or chicken curry, all that curry foolishness, it needs to stop. This rivalry has been going on ever since before CPL, from the Stanford days to the Caribbean T20 days now in the CPL. For real, when would this stop? Cricket is not supposed to be about war. It's supposed to bring people together in a festive way. For years now, cricket in the Caribbean has always brought everyone of race, religion, and ethnicity together. But what happened last night should never, and I mean ever, happen again in the Caribbean. Now, the CPL made a statement that they put out over 2 hours ago. And let me also say this. The statement that the Caribbean Premier League put out almost 2 hours ago has brought back dark memories of the 2007 ICC Men's Cricket World Cup final involving Australia and Sri Lanka, where play was suspended due to bad light. And the two officials who was officiating that final, Alinda of Pakistan and Steve Buckner from Jamaica, they jackassed the match. Now, Sri Lanka was already on the brink of losing, but they did want to bat out the overs. However, the light was taken. However, the partial bad light was affecting the Sri Lankans big time, and the Aussies didn't want it to continue, or some foolishness. But let me get to the point. What happened in last night's CPL eliminator has brought back bad memories from the 2007 World Cup final, where play was suspended due to severe bad light. Now, if I remember watching that 2007 World Cup final involving Australia and Sri Lanka, I was 5 years old at that time, and I remember what happened. Sri Lanka, they needed so much runs in the last 3 overs under the Duckworth-Lewis method, and that's where Alinda and Steve Buckner asked the Sri Lankan batters, do they want to accept bad light and go off? Both Malinga and Vas accepted the bad light and went off, and then the Aussies, typical Aussie way, went into huge celebration as the scorecard and the officials had declared Australia the winners of the World Cup. Then Alinda and Steve Buckner, beg your pardon, insisted that the game was only suspended and not completed. Now, they did have the reserve day back then. However, it was only 3 overs left, and at the Kensington Oval in Barbados at that time, there wasn't any floodlights. It was extremely dark. Even Stumpcam showed that it was extremely precarious out there. The only flashlights that was showing was from the cameras. There was no floodlights installed at the Kensington Oval at that time, because here in the Caribbean, cricket was only being played in the daytime at that time, with the exception of Antigua, which had installed floodlights the year or two before for Stanford competition. But seriously, Sri Lanka did bat out the remaining 3 overs from what I remember. I remember watching this final on television. That was after Ricky Ponting and Mahela Jayawardene, who was the captains of Australia and Sri Lanka respectively, following a gentleman agreement, opted to continue the game. Coming back to last night's match, in this case, the Royals did want it to do like Australia. They wanted to continue despite 2 of the light towers being down and out. And TKR, who, just like what Sri Lanka would have done, refused to restart. And I'm not showing any biasness to either the sides. Both teams, it's not Royals nor Knight Riders' fault. It is the officials that must be blamed fully. TKR, in all fairness, and they were right to do so, refused to restart the game. And I do not give them wrong. Why? Because had the match had continued, it would have been a total disadvantage. It would have been total unfair to the team that did not want it to resume the match. And what was mind-boggling about all this mess that occurred was how the cutoff time for the 5-over game, when all the problems with the light was still ongoing at that time, was 10:52 p.m., aka 22:52 hours. Then it was extended to 11:02 p.m., aka 23:02 hours, on purpose. I know who did it, the officials, but I'm not calling names. Plus, the other mishap when the game had restarted for the 5-over shootout, which did occur, was the power play, which was originally supposed to be just 1 over. That is 6 balls. Correction, only 6 balls for the 1 over the power play. How on earth you allow a 2-over power play for a 5-over shootout? That is a stupid rule. And if I remember quite well, I remember when I used to do gaming a lot when I was smaller, the power play only was 6 balls for a 5-over game. How dare they put 2 overs instead of 1? And for the record, I remember back in the day too, when there were 5-over games, 5 bowlers were allowed to bowl 1 over instead of 2. In this case, last night's match, there were a lot of loopholes that occurred. And just a reminder, as what I mentioned earlier on, it's not the fault of the Royals, neither TKR. All the fault and blame here must go to the CPL, the umpires, and the organizers. And worse enough, the organizers put out a statement on Facebook, X, and Instagram refusing to acknowledge the mistake and have yet to apologize. After all that controversy that occurred, the Royals came back out after all the lights was fixed 10 minutes after the cutoff time. They scored the 60 runs in 4.2 overs to qualify for Friday's second eliminator. And speaking of Friday's second eliminator, Royals have to face the Guyana Amazon Warriors. This is after the Kings defeated Amazon Warriors under the Duckworth-Lewis Stern method a short time ago by 13 runs to advance to the final for the third time. Many congratulations to the Kings. A huge shout out to them because they've always been the second team that I wanted to back anyways for the finals. And I did mention last week or two how that TKR would not make the finals because of how badly they played in the middle phase of the tournament. And those 2 games they lost to the Falcons and the one they lost to the Kings really was the turning point. For me, I want to see the St. Lucia Kings lift the CPL title for 2024, given the fact that they were underdogs and have never won it. Overall, that's all I want to say about Morant, other than the fact that the St. Lucia Kings are the first team into the CPL final, and to share my take on all this mess. I'm not calling for no replay of the match, by the way, because it is too late for a reserve day for that. And I know a lot of Guyanese will be very upset with the way how the game got called off involving them and St. Lucia. But that's how Mother Nature is. The only time Duckworth-Lewis Stern method has to come in play is when there's not for bad light, when there's bad weather. That is the blunder they made. I've seen matches end in bad light in the past with the usage of Duckworth-Lewis. But in last night's case, the game ended up reducing from 20 overs to 5 overs, which I find was totally unfair and a complete disgrace. That's it for my run video. Shout out to the Kings for reaching the finals. The second eliminator involving the Royals and Amazon is Friday at 7 p.m. I'll not be watching the rest of the games till the final in protest of the foolishness that the organizers caused last night, Tuesday. And with that being said, I wrap up the video. God bless, stay safe, and continue to think positive and not negative. Bye.